Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Listen, another day, no full episode of the Aaron Torres pod. It's actually quietly a busy time behind the scenes. Producer Matt and I are going to be on the road for a pretty big interview next week. I'll have details in the coming days. Jaden Quaintance, we just had on the show on Tuesday. And so I only bring it up because we will be back to a full live show Thursday night. But what I wanted to do was very quickly react to another piece of news involving Kentucky basketball. By the way, for the non-Kentucky fans, everyone's going to be bad. Torres, all you do is talk about Kentucky. They're the only ones making news right now, okay? And so there is all sorts of scheduling news that has come out about Kentucky in probably the last 5 to 6 days. Last week, it was the game with St. John's. Of course, that game in Atlanta, part of the CBS Sports Classic. Then a day later, we find out that they will play Purdue in an exhibition game. Well, I only bring it up because we got yet another piece of news pertaining to the schedule with Kentucky and their biggest rival, Louisville, as we got an official date for the Louisville-Kentucky game. And it certainly made headlines because Kentucky-Louisville, I think it's the best rivalry in college basketball. It will be played this coming season. How about this? November 11th of this upcoming season. It is by far the earliest this game has ever been played in the rivalry's history. By the way, I looked it up. This past year, this is a game that historically is being played mid to late December, sometimes even the first week of January after New Year's. I bring it up. Last year's game was December 14th. That was the earliest that it had ever been played since the game became an annual thing. Well, I bring it up because it is now a full month later, November 11th, earliest this rivalry has ever been played. And I'll tell you what, I think there was a lot of strong opinions from both Louisville and Kentucky fans. So let's talk a little bit about the game, what to expect when these two teams take the court. But of course, the big story, the date in which the game will be played. All right, so first off, says this is a glasses half full pod. Let's be glasses half full. And let me say this. Yes, the date is a little weird. We're going to get to that in a minute. But at the same time, what I will also say is that this should be one of the best games on the out-of-conference slate all season long. Now, there's some big games for both of these teams, but I'll say this. This should be, especially given the date of the game, this should be a top 10 matchup when these two teams take the court. November 11th is the second week of the season. I fully expect both of these teams to be in the AP top 10. This should be probably the first big game for either team on the schedule, meaning we are probably going to get a top 10 matchup between Louisville and Kentucky at the KFC Yum Center in Louisville. In terms of the two rosters, listen, we've talked so much about Kentucky. Let me give credit where it's due. I said it a year ago when Pat Kelsey put together his first roster. I said, Pat Kelsey was not familiar with your game because he put together a monster roster in year one. By the way, I should say this. I think the Kentucky-Louisville game last year, it was one of the best games on the slate, and I think that was the first time that I fully realized how good Louisville had the potential to be. Remember, they had all those injuries early in the season. They go to Rupp Arena. Not much is expected. I think final score was 93-86. Everybody remembers Lamont Butler having the historic game, but Chucky Hepburn was incredible. Terrence Edwards played well. Noah Waterman played well. And that was the first sign like, oh, Louisville's not going to be a pushover in the ACC. They ended up going 18-2 in league play. I'll say this. They are going to be way, way better in 2025, 2026. In terms of the roster Kelsey's put together, man, you know, we talked so much about them back in late March, early April. Most of their not dirty work, that sounds bad. Most of their heavy lifting was done, you know, pretty much as soon as the portal opened. The guys they got are big difference makers, some of the best players that entered the portal all offseason. You know, it's funny. I'm doing my transfer portal rankings right now in terms of best players. And I'll just say this. First of all, Ryan Conwell, who came from Xavier, almost 17 points per game, 41% three-point shooting. Yeah, he's pretty much as good as any guard who has entered the portal all offseason, certainly at the wing spot, and certainly among the players that we know is coming back to college basketball next year. I keep saying it. If Ryan Conwell was 6'6", he'd be in the NBA already. He's a little bit undersized at 6'4", but I bring it up because he is as good as anybody who entered the portal. Isaac McNeely, leading scorer on an otherwise forgettable Virginia team. How about this? Shot 43% from behind the three-point line, took over 550 three-point attempts. So it's one thing when you shoot, when you shoot that percentage, when you shoot 43% and you take, 43 pointers the entire season, when you take 553, that means that he was probably the best shooter to enter the portal all offseason. And then the kid I'm so excited about, Adrian Woolley, transfer from Kennesaw State. Listen, I think, we can all be honest here. Like, none of us watch Kennesaw State a ton during the regular season. Put on the film of this kid, 6'5", 18.8 points per game, 5 rebounds, almost 4 assists, 42% shooting from 3. You know how I know this kid is good? You know how I know this is a big recruiting win for Louisville? He is from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. When he entered the portal, not only did we as the college basketball public assume he was going to end up back in Tuscaloosa, I know for a fact Alabama thought they were in pretty good shape to land him. And Pat Kelsey comes out of nowhere, ends up getting Adrian Woolley. This kid, to me, listen, will it take potentially a little bit of time for him to adjust to the high major level? Maybe. But 19 points per game, 5 rebounds, almost 4 assists, 42. He's going to be good really quickly. And I think this kid has long-term NBA upside. Haven't even mentioned Mikael Brown Jr., highest rated recruit in about 2 decades for Louisville, McDonald's All-American at guard, Pryor down low. I mean, this team has a chance to be really special. If you watched our updated way too early top 25, you saw that I actually have Louisville as the favorite in the ACC going into next year. I have them about number 8, number 9. I have Duke right behind them. As far as Kentucky, listen, I'll say this. We've talked enough about Kentucky's roster. You pretty much probably know my stance on Kentucky's roster. By the way, if you have not yet listened, we did have Jaden Quaintance on the show last on Tuesday night. He was unbelievable. The response that I got, I'm so happy we did it just to see how excited Kentucky fans are to have this kid in blue. Among the highlights of that interview, he said he expects to be back for the start of the season. Now, never want to put a kid in a corner. It's always subject to change. You never want to rush him back. But Jaden Quaintance should be back, and I think he is going to be the face of this year 2 under Mark Pope. Have talked about this roster so much, but to me, the thing that stands out about this roster is the idea that, again, so much bigger, so much more athletic. I think Mark Pope really prioritized skill at this time last year. And as we've said, I think there is a baseline of you got to be athletic. You got to have guys that can just make plays when things don't go as planned. So Jalen Lowe at point guard. I think Denzel Aberdeen, I know everybody thinks, I'm just hyping him up because he's going to Kentucky. Dude averaged like 14.5 points per game, as a start when he started for Florida last year. And he only started about 6-7 games. But I bring it up because when he got starters minutes, he put up starter stats, and I think he's going to be great. We assume Otega Owe is coming back. And, of course, Quaintance down low, Mo Diabate down low, Brandon Garrison down low. That team is going to be beastly. Like I said, I think both teams are in the top 10. Now, let's talk about the date on the calendar. I know a lot of people are mad about it. And by the way, I haven't looked too much into it, from a trying to get information behind the scenes. But I will say, first of all, never tell fans how to feel. If you're frustrated, if you're angry, if you're mad, I totally get it. I will say this, though. It was last Friday. This is kind of the lamest thing. This is how boring my life is, okay? But my wife had a work commitment. She wasn't around. It was Friday night. I was looking for something to do. And it was actually the day that we found out that Florida and Arizona were going to be playing in the opening day of college basketball. And so I bring it up because this is how I spent my last Friday night. I started putting together a master list of all of the big out-of-conference games that we know. And I think part of it was we had just gotten the St. John's, Kentucky announcement. We had, Florida, Arizona. UConn's got a few big games on the schedule. And so I just put together this master list. But in the process of doing it, one thing stood out to me. The Champions Classic is very late this year. Now, I think November or Thanksgiving happens to fall particularly late on the 2025 calendar. But remember, the Champions Classic used to open the season. Like I remember the year that Zion was at Duke. That was the season opener in college basketball. Was Kentucky, Duke, Michigan State, and Kansas. Okay, well, obviously it's not. It hasn't been the season opener for a while, but it's generally been that first, the second Tuesday of the season. So the season opens, you play a week, then you play that second Tuesday. It's not till the third week of the season this year. Season opens November 5th. Oh, by the way, Champions Classic isn't until I believe the 18th. And so I will say, when I saw that on the calendar, I said, that's kind of weird. And I do wonder if what kind of games that have yet to be announced that college basketball will try to put on the calendar early to get people excited about the schedule. I assumed it would be something. And so I'll be curious, when at some point, Mark Pope and Pat Kelsey will address why is this game so early. I think part of it is the Champions Classic just happens to fall late on the calendar. ESPN wants big games early. And I wonder if the way both of these teams' schedules have broken, if they want games maybe earlier on the calendar than in the past. Kentucky, let's never forget, this year, Indiana is back on the schedule. Well, Indiana is December 13th, which is basically the first weekend without college football. Then December 20th, they play St. John's in Atlanta. You wonder if you're Mark Pope, it's like, dude, we got to get ready for SEC play. 3 marquee games, 3 pretty big games. I'd put Indiana's roster at about a top 30 or so roster right now. St. John's is a top 5 team. Louisville's a top 5 to top 10 team. That's a lot of weight to carry in the back half of December, especially when you factor in that Kentucky is already playing Michigan State, and that's in the Champions Classic, already playing Gonzaga in Nashville, and will have obviously a marquee opponent in the ACC SEC Challenge. And so to me, I wonder if there was some thought of like, hey, Champions Classic's a little bit later this year. Do we need 3 huge games in the back half of December? And then from the Louisville side of things, I just wonder 2 things. One, opportunity to get a game on the calendar early where you catch everybody's attention. It's early in the week, so plenty of people will be tuning in. I just wonder, the ACC is a little bit different next year. They have been playing 20 league games. Now they're not going to be playing 20. By the way, Louisville, the way the schedule falls, I believe they will have to take a West Coast trip to Stanford and Cal. So maybe that factors in. I don't fully know. But to me, I just wonder, from Kentucky's side of things, we already have 2 marquee games basically after December 10th. And the other thing I would say is just the way schedules broke, I wonder if that was part of it. Now, listen, again, I understand that for fans of these 2 fan bases or of these 2 schools, I totally get it. This is a game late December you have set your calendar to. It's kind of, the last big game of the out-of-conference portion of the slate. It's kind of in a time of frame where, it's early in bowl season, but it's never too much. I don't know all the details. All I do know is I am fired up for this game, but I also understand the frustration. When you get used to something on the calendar at a specific time, you get kind of bummed when it's not there anymore. Whether it's, I don't know, like if they moved the Maui Invitational to December, we'd be like, what the hell? Like that's a Thanksgiving staple. And I think it's much the same here with the Louisville, Kentucky game. So if you're a fan that's frustrated, I totally get it. Is it too late on the calendar? I'll let everybody else debate that. And I'll be curious when Mark Pope and when Pat Kelsey have to talk about this, what they have to say about how it falls. What I do know, though, is when these 2 teams play, first of all, when it falls so early in the calendar, it's going to be a top 10 matchup. But then on top of it, it is still going to be one of the best games of the college hoop slate. Do me a quick favor. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, do me a quick favor and make sure to subscribe. Over 56,000 subscribers. I appreciate your support. By the way, if you missed our interview with Kentucky's Jaden Quaintance on Tuesday, you better go back and listen to that. And we will have a full show. Promise you. We will have a full show on Thursday night. Probably talking a little bit about the NBA Combine, which starts early next week. Obviously, there's some big names there that could have an impact on college hoops. Otega Oweh, Carter Knox, etc. By the way, any questions? If you have a question for the mailbag, you can drop it in the comments on this video. Aaron Torres podcast questions at gmail.com. Appreciate your support. Appreciate everything. And full episode on Thursday.